On this episode of the BarraLux build, I'm going to fix the boring factory bonnet, reassemble the engine, make some engine and gearbox mounts, and paint the chassis. Land Cruiser bonnets are expensive, so I've got to get this right in the first attempt. Starting up, I'm going to measure it as closely as I can to perfect centre, so that when I cut it out, it's going to line up nicely with the new bonnet. Now that I'm happy with the marking out of the scoop, it's time to cut it out with a grinder. This video is going to involve a lot of grinding. A lot of grinding. Now to separate the scoop from the bonnet. Unfortunately, Toyota decided to Sikaflex it in place, so this took quite a bit of force to get out. Next, I need to clean the bonnet scoop and make some reference marks on it so I know where to line it up on the new bonnet. Using the reference marks on the scoop, I can line it up on the centre of the bonnet to trace it and cut out the centre section so it can be an actual bonnet scoop and not just a stick-on. And now it's time for my neighbour's favourite ambient noise. Once again, I have to put a lot of effort into peeling the skin away as it's Sikaflex to the frame. Now to test my measurements and see if the scoop lines up. As I stand back and look over this bonnet, I realise how painful this is going to be, and I wonder, why do I put myself through this? After I was done regretting my decisions, it's grinding time! With the bracing removed, I stand back and admire my work. I don't want any rust forming behind this, so before I go throwing the scoop on, I need to blow all the dust out. Now I start tacking the bonnet scoop in. Things I need to be aware of while I'm tacking it in is that I'm not putting too much heat in singular areas which will cause the thin metal to warp. I also need to make sure I'm working my way around it and pinning it in place so that it isn't going to move out of alignment as I'm doing final weld through. Now that I'm happy with the tacking, I can start stitching it in a bit more aggressively. I do still need to keep in mind that I don't put too much heat in singular areas, but I can move through a bit faster. Now with the welding done, it's time for my favourite thing. So I've just gotten the bonnet back from my dad, who's kindly donated his time to fill and smooth out my welding job that was absolutely perfect and not warped and didn't need any smoothing out. But as you can see, it looks absolutely immaculate and I couldn't be happier with the finish. It's time to make mounts for the engine and gearbox, but first I need to put the gearbox on so that I can put it into the chassis. To get the rear main seal out, I had to put a screw through it so I had something to grip onto. After some lube and some even massaging, I was able to work the new main seal into its home. And because I've changed over to an FG sump, I need to create some clearance so I can re-bolt the torque converter on. To check I've removed enough material, I'll hold the flex plate up and just line up the socket to see that I can get it on. Now with enough material removed from the block, I need to match up the sandwich plate.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Sandwich plate on, flex plate goes on, and then I torque them to spec. The engine has been sitting around in my dusty garage for quite a while, so I'm going to give it a thorough clean out before I go putting the sump back on. I'll put the seals and the goop on the sump, and then it's time to go back on the engine. And now onto the good stuff. And by good stuff, I mean hours of meticulous measurements. Before putting the engine into the chassis, I'm going to make up some base plates to make it easier for me to line up the arms to hold it in place. First I measure the basic shape, cut them out, mark out where I need to drill the holes, then I'll drill the holes out. With the plates on, it's time to reattach the transmission. Then the adapter for the Nissan transfer case can go on. Now with the help of the engine crane, I can manoeuvre this 300 kilos of engine in place. So I've got the chassis set up on a trestle at the front and rear, so I've got it all levelled out perfectly so I have a good reference point for setting up where the engine's going to sit. I'm going to have it on a few degree downward angle to the rear, that way it'll clear the trans tunnel underneath the Hilux cab. Now I'm just going to set up some lasers, line it up to the centre of the chassis, and then I can weld in some engine mounts so it's in there for good. So we've reached our first major milestone. The engine is now holding itself up under its own weight. With the engine done, it's time to do the transmission now. And that means more measuring, more drilling, more welding, and more grinding. So much grinding. And here we have the finished gearbox mount. With that finished, it's time to start preparing the Patrol chassis. One of the hardest parts of working on heavy components is being able to support it at a safe working height, so we're going to make up some A-frames next. These will also be used to support the cab when we come up to the swap, so we're going to have to reinforce them adequately to hold that extra weight. Because we're going to a Hilux cab on this Patrol chassis, the rear mounts will no longer be required. Now I need to clean the chassis up for the new reinforcement plates and tray mounts. To prevent rust, I've sprayed zinc spray on the chassis and the back side of the plates. Now I've just got to line them up, clamp them in place, and I can start tacking. Before doing the final welding pass, I have to remove the weld through primer. Then I've set up a piece of square section steel just to have something to rest my arm on while doing the welding. Time for obligatory friendship slave labour on car activities. Which end do you want? You want the shit end or the good end?
I thought we were just going to do, I figured you were going to go...
I just think that if we got the opposite ends, we're less likely to flip shit easier.
Oh, okay. I just figured because you've got the big one, you were going to go for the big stuff. So,
yeah, right. I'll start this end then. With the chassis nice and clean, it's time to paint it. I don't want to do that in the garage, so I've set up a gazebo in the driveway. But I'm not strong enough to carry a Patrol chassis all on my own. So instead, I've turned my engine crane into a makeshift dolly.
Budweiser presents Real Men of Genius.
Real men of genius.
Today we salute you, Mr. Footlong Hot Dog Inventor.
Mr. Footlong Hot Dog Inventor.
Now I can use the A-frames that I made just a few minutes ago to support the chassis at an ideal height for painting. Now I'm applying the cavity spray to prevent any rust forming inside the chassis. Now I'll spray the chassis with an industrial urethane enamel to make it look brand new and to prevent any rust forming on it in the future. This took a while, so enjoy this sped up time lapse. So yeah, we'll just get it off this. And then yeah, just got to be careful letting it down because we don't want to drop it too quickly.
Make sure we get.
Please fix my paint.
You want a hand? Or you...
Reposition here. Right, you can let your end down now.
Alright, one tab's on here. Other tab is on.
With the paint done, we can lower the chassis down and start putting the suspension in. It's quite heavy, so I did struggle throughout the process. While the chassis was still relatively bare, I took advantage of this time to check that the suspension travel would be able to move through its full motion without any bind. With that done, I could throw the suspension back in and do a physical test to see what it's going to feel like. Just here with a quick update on the BarraLux progress so far. Got the rear pickup in the extended tank. Got the fuel pump in the main tank now, a 255, which will keep up with the stock power that I'm going to be running. Got the oil coolers in here. That's both the trans and the engine oil cooler in there. Looking hella fine as always. And then got the lines on this side for the engine oil and trans cooler. In the next episode of the BarraLux, it's time to strip down the Hilux and put this cab onto the Patrol chassis.